again, that's another light bulb moment for kids. It's like, oh, that's what that means.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a kind of a cool way to say it. Neat.
Yeah.
Another kid says, I thought it was fun to work in small groups and entertaining and exciting to watch the performers. And then finally, I think it was really fun to see the actors perform because it lets us see the potential of Shakespeare's plays.
Welcome, Amy Bryant, Education Outreach Coordinator for Austin Shakespeare. I'm glad to have you here on the Troubadour Show to talk about Austin Shakespeare's programs, because you're focusing on getting Shakespeare and the classics from a theater perspective into classrooms, particularly in Central Texas, mostly Austin. And
yes, bringing Shakespeare into the classrooms.
And so I want to talk to you about that. And I wanted to start off with something like, what do you see as unique about what you're doing, what Austin Shakespeare's doing in offering this in the classroom? What's different?
What's different about the Austin Shakespeare's outreach programs in contrast to maybe some of the other arts organizations that come into the classroom?
Sure.
By the way, I have 2 kiddos in Austin ISD, so I've been lucky to be familiar with some of the stuff that they've done. And Austin Shakespeare is unique in that we're tailoring the content of our workshops to meet the curriculum needs for that particular class and those particular students.
Okay.
So we're not coming in with sort of a pre-packaged show. We're instead coordinating with the teacher, understand what play they're studying, where they are in the play, and then how we can support those efforts. So, really being unique to what the students and the teachers need.
I see. So a lot of arts programs, wonderful as they may be, will have like, this is what we're going to teach. You're going to draw this, you're going to create this, you're going to do this, which there's a lot of value to that, of course, because it makes them be able to do more of it. It gives the students like something regulated to work with. But the value that you're offering that's different than this is that you're going to go in. You might have with Ann Ciccolello, the artistic director, and a couple of actors as an example, might go in with a couple speeches they want to work with the kids, but they're really going to cater it, individualize it for each individual kid, to each group of kids, really listen to them and the teacher and the administrators and figure out what's best. Like, what does this class need right now from Shakespeare?
That's exactly right. And so we'll have students that are sort of in the middle of, say, Midsummer Night's Dream, that study, and wanting us to work with that material, showcase some of those soliloquies, and then lead them into sort of the second part of their study for that play. We've worked with classes on Twelfth Night, Romeo and Juliet, and even honing in on certain scenes that they want to practice if they're doing a performance of the play, for example. And so we're working with them specifically, again, really catering to what they need and what they want. And as Anne said too, a lot of teachers, Shakespeare is not a required part of the ELA curriculum in schools anymore versus, 15, 20 years ago, that was really different. And so a lot of the teachers that are teaching these plays are maybe not familiar and don't have the tools to lead their class in that unit of study per se. So we're coming in and also helping support them at a curriculum level, even with this works.
Okay, so I want to stick on that for 1 second. Mm-hmm. So this is something that I've kind of registered, but I haven't really researched it enough, and I'm very curious about it, is in the ELA, the English language arts programs, K through 12, that there has been a shrinking of the teaching of classics. Is that true? Is that what you're saying? Like or less of it than it was 25 years ago, let's say.
I would say that's probably right. I know sort of sure about Shakespeare specifically. Oh, okay. I'm not sure about other classical works, okay, but Shakespeare is no longer a required part of the ELA curriculum for middle school or high school in Texas.
Oh, that I didn't know. Oh, okay. So there was a time when if you wanted to teach at a public school, you had to teach some Shakespeare.
That's right.
And there was requirements. I remember I had to have some Shakespeare. But what you're saying is now it's not at all a requirement. So it's really an option. And one of the issues is that you're having teachers who may have other expertise, other areas. And so they're not as maybe interested, motivated, or knowledgeable even in a sense of the best ways to teach this, because it really takes a specialty to teach it. And so what Austin Shakespeare, what you're doing is just making that a lot easier for them. So they just like, I don't even have to know it. I bring these individuals over. They're going to get my students engaged in Shakespeare as part of the curriculum.
I think that's right. And then opening up, certain doors. Shakespeare is meant to be heard and not read. And so I think a lot of what we find in the classroom, the students are assigned reading, but they're not necessarily spending that class time, vocalizing, right, and performing Shakespeare. So when we come in and we have the actors do these soliloquies, and to watch the students in the classroom, and first of all, I will say these actors are extraordinarily talented. We've worked with Emily Green and Justin Scalise, and they're true talents. To see them, do these scenes and embody these words, is quite something. And when you look around the classroom at the student faces, and it's just like, wow, I've never seen that before, and I may not understand all the words that they're saying, but because of the performance, I sort of get it. I sort of get what's going on. And then we'll spend some time unpacking those unfamiliar words and paraphrasing maybe a scene or a soliloquy. And that's super fun too. So to kind of demystify some of that language that may be unfamiliar and sometimes even scary. Students just don't know how to even pronounce it. But those part of the workshops are especially fun.
Yeah. So one of the things is if you're in a classroom all the time and you are getting this training from teachers in a variety of ways, to one just simplistic fun value is just having a professional actor come to your class and just wake up the kids a little bit, get them involved, and say some funny lines, some from Midsummer or something, and show them where the humor comes from and get them excited about it, or a dramatic scene or something. And then students who are obsessed, I was as a kid, and I know most of us are obsessed with media in general, and there's always we watch lots of movies, we watch TV shows, there's YouTube, and there's all these different ways of projecting your personality, but to see it in front of you with a professional at the highest level is something unique that you're not going to get anywhere else. You're not going to see that with a professional, especially one-on-one or one-on class. You'll get that with Austin Shakespeare.
That's right. So, for example, I'm thinking about Justin Scalise's performance of Bottom's Dream from A Midsummer Night's Dream, and it's so funny. It's just raucous, and I don't know that. It was just kids are surprised by how funny it is and how silly it is, and that it's okay to laugh, and Shakespeare can be funny, right? Yeah. So a lot of times they don't, if they're just reading it off the pages from a book, they don't necessarily get that. So it really is an extraordinary treat to see the student faces as they're watching these performances and the light bulbs go off,
So there's also the element of the understanding, of course, of the actual text, which even though it's not part of ELA, there's a value for students understanding and Shakespeare in particular, and just train their mind through this very difficult language that is going to be different than what they're getting in the real world. And one of the questions I had is classrooms, I think, are going to be more and more evolving as we integrate artificial intelligence, as more of that gets involved, where I think there's potential for more personalization, for instance. And there's a lot of value there. But is there still, and what would be the value of Shakespeare in doing this for this modern audience of kids, who are going to be dealing with AI and they're inundated with media?
I think there is a lot to unpack there. And for sure, education is evolving, and I think it's a super exciting time. And what AI specifically can bring in terms of recognizing where a student's at and what they need in order to grow and go forward. But fundamentally, learning is a social activity, right? So there's real value in students being in the classroom together instead of, say, a student being in front of a computer and having a chatbot or an AI. It's a fundamentally social activity. We learn and are inspired by each other. When Austin Shakespeare comes into the classroom and we're introducing these big, themes, universal themes, right, of love and jealousy and anger, maybe. And so I think there's a real benefit for students to engage with these works, to understand that, right? And they'll run into this in contemporary works over and over. The themes in Romeo and Juliet, are used in countless other, plays and stories and even movies, right? So, I think that's always a big plus. And that's what, as a parent, I'm real interested in my kids learning and engaging with, to be an informed citizen of the world and to have been exposed to these big themes and ideas and classical ideas. That's important.
Yeah, so it's not just the reading of literature, and particularly Shakespeare, is not just about training to a test. That's not the point of it, where when was Shakespeare born? What is there for me? And, and what does that mean? What do these things mean? And there's this testing kind of mentality. There's a holistic character purpose in terms of the building and development of good characters, good citizens. That's a part of the value of Shakespeare. And as we move into more AI, where it is more personalized, which I think is going to be one of the groundbreaking things in education, is just having that personalized effect for each student is going to be good. If you think about how people were educated hundreds of years ago, if they're educated, they had a tutor, and that was it. But we can't.
If you were one of the
wealthy, what's I'm saying? Only the wealthy, yeah. Like nobody else got educated, only the wealthy. And now we might have the opportunity to do that with every single child at any level, any wealth status, wherever they come from, get individual. So that's for me, a game changer. However, on top of that, you still want them not to just be sitting in a blank room by themselves with a computer, getting things ingested into their head, reading things in their head. You need to get them outside, living with their body, thinking about their emotions, how what they say matters to other people. And Shakespeare has that in spades. And the other thing you mentioned that's really interesting to me is the modeling of the kind of the world we live in, that Shakespeare built a lot of the models of what we live in. I remember hearing someone talk about Shakespeare, or Romeo and Juliet, as they didn't want to teach it in high school anymore because students thought it was too boring. They didn't understand it. And I was just like, how can these kids who are experiencing love for the first time in a lot of ways, how can you not make this relatable and interesting where they're engaged with this, especially when every romance story that is out there today, every rom-com is basically modeled on this story. And to see the origin of it is so profound. And then you can see like, oh, I see that pattern everywhere. What does that mean to see that pattern in the world I live in? Which I think if you just see the patterns, the replica of it, you're not seeing it in its best form that has been replicated. It's like the copy is never as good as the original.
And I think in some way for students to understand that these themes were, ones that were relevant hundreds and hundreds of years ago when Shakespeare was writing. So when Anne is in the classroom talking about Romeo and Juliet, there'll be a pause, and she'll ask, how old do you think Romeo and Juliet? How old do you think they were?
Yeah.
And she's like, they're 15. They're 15, and then to watch the student faces go, oh, wow,
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel that. And I've had it where my mom or my dad doesn't want me to, associate with this person. And I feel that it's still real.
Yeah.
It's real today for us as it was real hundreds of years ago. And I think they're understanding that, knowing that these human experiences and these things, in fact, the things that make us human, right? Shakespeare, I think, is a vehicle by which they kind of get that and understand it.
And I like what you said, the 15-year-old high school student sees this Romeo and Juliet character. They're the same age. They see these types of experiences are very similar to what they're experiencing in 2024. And one of the things I love about making sure we keep Shakespeare and other classics, but Shakespeare in the classroom is 30 years later or 20 years later, they're in their 30s, 40s. They're going to see it from the other side. And they're going to see it as the parents. And so they're going to have a different perspective. And I think Shakespeare, better than anybody else, maybe, I don't know if he does it better. I shouldn't say that. But among the best of them, of doing that where your different perspectives are, it's not just to who you are right now, it's to the human condition of a whole life from birth until death. And that's why so many people from their whole lives, when they fall in love with Shakespeare, especially early, continue to love him until their last breath. And I think that's part of it, is like, you at 15, you're like, yeah, I get Romeo and Juliet. At 40, you're like, yeah, I get the Capulets and the Montagues, and like, they made mistakes, and I get why they made mistakes, and that is a mistake, and it's a good lesson for us parents.
So I saw the production of Romeo and Juliet this past summer, and it had been a while, I guess, since I had seen Romeo and Juliet performed. And as a parent of a now 15-year-old, you're exactly right? It was that, oh yeah, I totally sympathize, Lady Capulet. I get the parents' concern.
The kids did Richard III.
That's right.
Which was, like, to me, really amazing, because I feel that that's such I don't know, some part of me thinks that's such an adult thing. And you see these kids playing it out, and it's, well, okay, there's definite universal themes, and they had such a good time reaching and trying to understand these, very difficult characters to understand. And Richard III did a fantastic job. But just to see like a 17-year-old play Richard III is really engaging.
Truly remarkable, the talent of the young Shakespeare kiddos.
Yeah.
And we do that every summer, working with teens 13 to 19. And they'll perform at the Austin's Curtain Theater, as Anne talked about. And what a treat, not just for the audience, but for the student actors to have that experience and to engage with that material. I think it's one of those, lifetime milestone memories, right? They'll never forget.
Dude, I mean, it's not likely they're going to be Shakespeare actors for their life. But I do like to say this for those who do want to become actors. I've noticed that some of the best actors in movies and television today are British Shakespeare trained actors. Is that, there's like this joke of American actors complaining about British actors taking all the roles. And I think part of it is probably because they're maybe better trained and just the core of acting. And movie acting is very different, of course, and there's a new thing but there's something just universal about the emotional range and training you're getting if you're getting real Shakespeare acting training. So for those who do want to become actors, I think you can't beat some like a year, 2 years of just real intensive training in Shakespeare will be, you'll be spades above everybody else.
I think that's exactly right. And these kids that do young Shakespeare get to work with our artistic director, Anne Cicolella, which is in and of itself, extraordinary treat, right? So working with these professional directors and technicians, it's a terrific opportunity. Rehearsals usually will start in late May. Performances are in June. So it's a short, succinct, just like super packed, wonderful experience for these kids. So go to austinshakespeare.org to find out more about our Young Shakespeare program and our other outreach offerings.
So I wanted to talk to you about the programs of Austin Shakespeare, what it looks like, just real quickly, each of the different programs. There's a variety of programs, whether you're a teacher, a parent, an administrator. What does it look like? What's the value? What is it? And we're just going to kind of go through the list. You're going to give me, if you don't mind, a couple of insights into it. So first off, tell me about Shakespeare 2020 workshop. How does it transform? How is it a transformative experience for kids?
Well, great. I'll take the first part of your question. The Shakespeare 2020, these are on-site workshops with our artistic director and two actors from Austin Shakespeare. So we're coming into the classroom, we're working with teachers and a group of students. The first 20 minutes is spent with the actors and engaging around the work. And then the second 20 minutes is spent where the students themselves are performing scenes from the Shakespeare plays. And like we talked about before, I will coordinate with the teachers, sometimes the administration, understand what they're hoping to get out of these workshops. If there's a particular play that they're doing or working on, so that we can tailor the workshop specifically to their curriculum needs.
Nice. And it's a really snappy thing, 2020, right? So I could just get you in, have, and you'll work with me, the teacher, to figure out what's best for my students. And two actors will come. They'll do 20 minutes of the reading performance and then 20 minutes of workshopping with the students.
The students are getting on their feet and actually saying the words and doing the scenes, and that's great fun for them.
Yeah, and that's generally going to be like one class.
Yeah.
In a sense, right? Like most classes are like 40, 50 minutes, right?
That's right.
So it's like you could just have, when people are planning out, when teachers are planning out their year, they can just say, okay, I want to have Austin Shakespeare here this day, Austin Shakespeare here this day. Like have 2, 3, 4 times a year that they're doing this, which I think will take off some of the load from the teachers too. Okay, master classes and workshops. What's this?
Right. So, depending on the school and what they're doing, Austin Shakespeare will come in to lend a hand. Most recently, we were at McCallum High School. And as you know, that's a fine arts academy. There's a terrific theater program there led by Bonnie Brookby. And her students were doing She Stoops to Conquer, and required the student actors to be in costume. And this was, by the way, a UIL play for them. So they wanted to put their best foot forward. And so Austin Shakespeare came in and did a movement workshop with them. So to teach them or to help them understand, how the ladies held their fan, how the men bowed, how they comported themselves during that time, how they sat down, what their posture was like. And so inviting them to truly understand the characters from that time. And the students really responded. It was great fun. They ended up winning all kinds of award at the UIL University Interscholastic League. It's a competitive series of events. There's theater, there's sports. So McCallum does, they do a play. I think it's a 40-minute play. They're very strict rules and guidelines. And
that's amazing.
Yeah, so She Stoops to Conquer. So we did a movement workshop with the students at McCallum Fine Arts Academy, and that was great. And we've also worked with students who do want to go on and do professional acting. They're auditioning for college programs, so we'll help them with preparing audition materials, because when you're auditioning for these theater programs, you're required, by the way, to do one monologue that's a Shakespearean monologue. So giving them some know-how and of course being able to work with the authority and Shakespeare and performing Shakespeare and Chicolella is an enormous opportunity and an enormous treat for them. So master classes. So again, we're coming to the school and we're tailoring what we do to the needs of the class and the students.
I think the movement is really great to see that there were times and eras even when there were prescribed ways of interacting, which is a great lesson in and of itself, just to see how that how would you portray a 16th century person, or that is that what I'm getting from what you're saying?
So it was so funny to watch the students and, just even walk across the stage, when they're walking across the stage and they're saying their lines and, but understanding, well, when a woman from that time walks across, she will have her hands just slightly apart from her so as to not, ruffle the dress and dirty, because, they had the big skirts and it really, you could see just from the beginning to the end of that workshop, how they understood where their bodies needed to be and how to move to embody those characters from that time. Really extraordinary. It just invites them to understand, even almost like sort of like at a cellular, physical level, the characters from the play. That was super cool.
Yeah, and from an education standpoint, it still gives another example, a counter example to their own way of doing things, which is just to say,
because they're walking across,
Well, exactly. Just to think that there are like I think in our era, we're probably much less conscious of the way we move. I think in other eras, because they had prescribed, and I'm just assuming, I don't know if this is true, but they have prescribed ways you should, and models of how you should hold yourself and walk. And so it's a good exercise for a young person to see, oh yeah, I guess I could hold myself this way. That's and this is one way to do it. And I don't do that. And it's just probably a confidence builder to hold yourself that way. I think I probably should sit up straight. I don't do it. Okay. So let's, a couple more real quick. So World's Fastest Hamlet. What do we got here?
So this is usually an assembly style program where we're inviting maybe the whole school into the theater or even the cafeteria, and we'll do this kind of funny, silly, accessible take on Hamlet, using actual words from the play. But I think is it 10 minutes? And then 1 minute and then 20 seconds or something of Hamlet.
I have to ask, so how do you, what do you say about the making of humorous Hamlet?
I mean,
because it's not a humorous, it's not one of the comedies. Unless I misidentify.
I think that's right. I think it's kind of a sort of a broad approach to the play, and I think the point is that we can have fun with Shakespeare and this
even the tragedies.
Yes, and this
you could do that with Midsummers. You could dress up and prance around and do some fun stuff. But yeah, when you're talking about death and being, it's usually not thought of as funny.
Not usually, but these actors, and they're very aware of their audience. They're engaging with the students, and they're asking them questions, and they're being a little bit over the top and a little bit silly with it. But it helps demystify and unpack.
So it's an approach to tragedy because they don't ever approach it anymore.
I think that's fair.
Let's open the door.
I think that's fair to say, right?
And then Kirk will come in and be like, "This is serious, though. Let's go." And we'll get this. Okay. All right. Last one, and then I want you to. There's a couple good quotes I'd like to hear from you from these kiddos.
Terrific.
Of all ages, not just kiddos, like adult kiddos, teenagers, right? Student informances. What is this?
So these are student-specific performances of our main stage show. This year it will be Jane Eyre in November and the Mahabharata in February. And so we're inviting students into the Rollins Theater from the play. We're doing sort of select scenes, but it's with full costumes, full lighting, all the actors. So we're tailoring that, again, that word tailored. So we're tailoring it to the student audiences that are coming. And we're showcasing, those scenes that we believe, resonate with them or that we can then pick up on and ask them questions about. At the end of that short student informants, and these are normally about 40 minutes, right? So sort of a more succinct subset of the full main stage play. We will have a question and answer session where the actors will come out, the directors will come out, even the technicians will come out and allow students to ask questions. And sometimes it's funny the things that they'll ask. Mm-hmm. How do you remember all those lines? Or, how did where did you get the costume? And to deeper, kind of more interesting questions about the themes and what that made those actors feel. So that's a real treat to be able to engage. I think for the students to engage with the actors and directors and get to talk about the play and the themes and the things that came up. And a lot of time Anne will ask questions of the students and to kind of, elicit and sort of pull out those ideas that maybe they hadn't really thought about, but that she's able to help them kind of bring into focus and articulate. It's super fun. The performance itself is very accessible. Student tickets are only $10. And chaperones attend for free. So this is a really affordable way to get kids out into the theater. A lot of times these kids have never been to a professional theater production before. So it's a big treat. And so we'll have school buses come and the kids unload. And last year they were there for O. Henry stories.
So what an informant is obviously not the whole performance. So it's like $10. They come out, they see a part, and then they have Q&A. Like that makes sense.
That's right. So
versus they can obviously come to a full performance. And do you ever have are there discounts for schools or programs you do with schools?
Yes, there are student ticket prices for every show, and you don't need to show a student ID or anything. So if you want to come to a full Shakespeare performance, that's terrific. We'd love to have you. But those are distinct and unique from the student informances, which are tailored specifically to those education and student audiences.
Okay, so I think you have a couple of quotes from students who've gone through these programs, right? Is that what these are?
Yes.
Yeah,
these are quotes from students, I believe, from the Shakespeare 2020 workshops. And so you kind of get.
So that's the 20 minutes of a performance by the two actors, and Anne Ciccolella comes. And then there's the 20 minutes of workshops that they work on. That's the 2020. And this is them doing that. Is this your most popular program?
We do a lot of Shakespeare 2020 workshops, and those can be, again, as we talked about, we'll tailor that to the curriculum needs for the class and the teacher. So we'll do Midsummer Night's Dream, we'll do Twelfth Night, we'll do Romeo and Juliet, we'll do Macbeth, and the actors. We're just very fortunate to have such talented actors here in Austin that whatever you throw at them, they're like, great. I've done that a million times, and I'm ready. But so this is what the students have to say after seeing engaging with the Shakespeare 2020 workshops. One student said, I really like the parts where I got to act and where I got to watch others act.
Okay. And what do you know the grade of that one?
I believe that was going to be a middle school student.
Okay, middle school. Okay. Mm-hmm. So it's probably his or her first experience, I'd bet.
I'm guessing so. And this is true for a lot of the students that we engage with. They've never had an opportunity to get up and in front of their peers speak these lines. So it's
one value I'm just coming to me of this program is just part of what you want to do in education and as parenting, I think, is identify the passions and interests of your kids. Sometimes that could be very expensive. Like, am I going to spend a whole summer camp doing acting classes because he saw something he liked on YouTube once? And then, you do that and he hates it or she hates it. And it's like, okay, well, that was a waste of time and money, versus you could have a quicker introduction and you say, oh, this kid likes this. Let's now do the camp, right? Let's now do Young Shakespeare. So it just, it's to me, it's just like someone thinking financially. It's so much easier to help you identify passions of your kids in this realm. So it's like every classroom should have this at least a couple times a year, or every other year, whatever, like the 5th grade, 7th grade, whatever, having it come in. So you could say, oh, this kid seems to really start liking acting now. Let's put a little bit of money in that with that child.
I think that's right. And you can see, you can see with the kids that it really is, it opens up doors and possibilities for them, which is
for 40 minutes.
As you say, as a parent and an educator, there's nothing better than that.
Yeah. And you can't beat 40 minutes, I think, to figure that out.
And so another student says the small groups were cool because we got to paraphrase, and getting to perform was cool. So that activity of unpacking those unfamiliar words and assigning words or concepts or turns of phrases that are more familiar to them. Again, that's another light bulb moment for kids. It's like, oh, that's what that means. Mm-hmm. And that's a kind of a cool way to say it. Neat.
Yeah.
Another kid says, I thought it was fun to work in small groups and entertaining and exciting to watch the performers. And then finally, I think it was really fun to see the actors perform because it lets us see the potential of Shakespeare's plays.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's a lot of what we talked about, right? Like just coming to life with these kids.
That's
like there's real human kids getting this experience now. Don't miss out on this before your kid's an adult. So get into it now, and don't wait for this kind of thing.
That's
kids
right.
grow up. I don't know if you knew that.
I'm in
and then they're like, oh, you look back. I wish I would have gotten some Shakespeare.
Yeah, no.
And by the way, I just have to say, I talk to a lot of adults, and I try to help them with getting classics and poetry and Shakespeare. And I've had a little bit of success. And I hear this all the time, though, of just, I wish I'd have gotten some of this stuff earlier, because it would have been less difficult, and I would have enjoyed the value of Shakespeare and this humongous wealth of great words, ideas, characters, emotions, that as much as I was a film major, I love film, I love media, but it's just a completely different world. And you have to have the door opened.
100%. And I think being exposed to this material and these ideas and these themes as a young kid, exactly, it opens doors and perspectives into, reading contemporary works or seeing contemporary plays and seeing them pull from these ancient, I shouldn't say ancient, but these older Shakespeare plays. And it gives them a worldly perspective that I think is really important for kids, and adults alike, really.
I think so too. Yeah, it's a general education tool. So.
Right.
Okay, Amy Bryant, Education Outreach Coordinator for Austin Shakespeare.
Got it.
Yes. So any last thoughts on Austin Shakespeare and the value of education and why we need to support this program and get it into more schools in Texas? Not just Austin. I did not realize this ELA Shakespeare thing. That is news to me, by the way. That's a big deal to me.
I think it's an extraordinary opportunity for our Austin youth to be able to engage with this world-class theater company, Austin Shakespeare, and the level of talent and just intellectual capital that Anne brings into the class with these kids is extraordinary. I'm so happy that our AISD students and Round Rock students and Leander students have access to this great resource. And I will say we're booking for the 2024-2025 school year now. Mm-hmm. We do have, obviously we're limited by our calendar. We are informances in November, the Jane Eyre informants we're booking now. It's the Rollins Theater, so there are a limited number of seats. So I guess I would just, it's a smaller theater. So I would just encourage anyone that's listening to reach out to.
Because it's going to book up.
Education at austinshakespeare.org, so we can save you a spot and get you on the calendar and get you engaged with this world-class organization that is Austin Shakespeare.
So that email is how to get a hold of you. Amy Bryant, Education Outreach Coordinator, Austin Shakespeare.
That's me. Yeah. But it's easier. It's just education at austinshakespeare.org. And you can go to our website, www.austinshakespeare.org/students. We'll give you that rundown of all of our outreach offerings. And there's a link right there to book a spot. Yeah. So just click that link on that page. It'll shoot off an email to me, and I'll get you on the calendar and get you scheduled for these exciting education opportunities that will open doors and big ideas for students.
Opening doors, that's what we do. All right. Well, thank you very much, Amy Bryant, Education Outreach Coordinator of Austin Shakespeare. Look at that.
That's me.
Yeah, that's you. Thanks for coming on to the show. And hopefully you'll come back and we can dig into some actual education of this stuff. We talked a lot about the programs, but I'd love to really look at like an actual performance or something. That'd be so much fun.
We'd love to have you out too.
Yeah, I'll definitely be out. Okay. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.